From two drug smugglers who got caught in the wrong cabin to a police sergeant whose only mistake was trusting the wrong man, these are the people Dexter Morgan never should have killed. Starting with Estabbon and Tio. The Bay Harbor Butcher investigation was closing in on Dexter, and he had done the unthinkable: kidnapped Sergeant James Dokes, the one cop who could see through his mask. Hidden away in a remote Everglades cabin, these mortal enemies were locked in a deadly stalemate that can only end with one of them dead. Dokes had discovered Dexter's blood slide collection and knew he was the Bay Harbor Butcher. Game over, right? Nope, not for Dexter. Instead of killing one man who could destroy him, he chose imprisonment, holding Dokes in Santos Jimenez's old drug cabin while desperately trying to figure out his next move. The cabin was a powder keg waiting to explode. Not only was it hiding a kidnapped police officer, but it still contained massive amounts of cocaine from Jimenez's operation. Every day Dexter delayed was another day closer to discovery, exposure, and the complete destruction of his carefully constructed life. Estabbon and Tio had no idea that they were about to walk into hell. These Cuban drug smugglers arrived by airboat to collect Jimenez's leftover cocaine stash. Just another routine pickup for two career criminals trying to make a living. They weren't killers or psychopaths, just working men in a dangerous business. When Dokes managed to escape his makeshift prison, he was running blind through the swampland. Hearing the approaching airboat, he saw salvation and frantically waved from shore. These strangers would be his ticket to freedom and his chance to finally expose Dexter's crimes. But the moment Dokes identified himself as police, everything went to hell. The Famosa brothers didn't need perfect English to understand that cops meant trouble. They knocked Dokes unconscious and forced him at gunpoint to haul their cocaine to the boat. Dexter returned, expecting his controlled situation, and instead he found chaos. Two armed strangers were using his prisoner as slave labor, completely oblivious that they were threatening the one person who could end Dexter's world. What happened next was one of the most twisted moments in the series. Dexter Morgan and James Dokes, bitter enemies who had been trying to destroy each other for months, suddenly found themselves fighting side by side for their lives. Dexter signaled his presence while Dokes bought him time by arguing with Tio. Moving like the predator he was, Dexter slipped behind Estabbon and snapped his neck. The sound of breaking bone echoed through the humid air. When Dexter emerged with Estabbon's gun, Dokes read the situation perfectly. He grabbed a handful of cocaine and threw it directly into Teo's face, blinding him. Dexter didn't hesitate. One shot through the heart, and both brothers were dead. In the silence that followed, something unprecedented happened. Dokes, the man who had dedicated his life to stopping Dexter, actually thanked him for saving his life. For one brief moment, these mortal enemies acknowledged that they just survived hell together. But reality crashed back quickly. They had two bodies and a crime scene to clean up. Working with grim efficiency, they fed both corpses to the alligators, watching prehistoric predators erase all evidence of the Famosa brothers' existence. Crisis handled, the old dynamic returned. Dexter re-imprisoned Dokes and their deadly game resumed. But something had fundamentally changed in that cabin. The Famosa brothers marked Dexter's first kills without vetting. No research, no confirmation they were murderers, no careful planning, just survival instinct overriding Harry's code when everything was on the line. This shattered precedent would echo throughout every future violation. When Dexter later killed Oscar Prado, he claimed he'd never killed without vetting, conveniently forgetting the Famosa brothers. This selective amnesia revealed how easily Dexter rewrote his own history to maintain his righteous self-image. The Famosa brothers were just collecting drugs from a dead dealer. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong prisoner to threaten. But when his survival was at stake, Dexter's true nature emerged. He'd murder anyone standing between him and freedom. This moment in the swamp revealed the monster Harry's code was designed to contain, foreshadowing every moral compromise that would eventually destroy everything Dexter claimed to believe. You think this was Dexter's first real slip? We're just getting started. Hit that like button so we can keep digging into every time he broke the code and hope nobody noticed. Dexter had just killed two strangers without a second thought, but the real collapse began when he killed someone whose name he actually knew. Season 3 opened with Dexter hunting Fred Frebo Bowman, a drug dealer who killed two college girls but walked free thanks to a botched warrant. It was supposed to be another routine kill. Research the target, confirm he deserved to die, execute justice. But sometimes the universe has other plans, and those plans don't care about Harry's code. Frebo was a piece of garbage who had murdered innocent college students and was laughing at the justice system from his crack house hideout. Dexter had done his homework, confirmed Frebo's guilt, and was ready to deliver the punishment Miami courts couldn't. It should have been textbook. Get in, kill the drug dealer, dispose of the body, go home to Rita. But Frebo's world was messier than Dexter anticipated. The drug trade doesn't operate in a vacuum, and there were other players with their own scores to settle. Unknown to Dexter, the Prado family had their own reasons for wanting Pharaoh dead, and Oscar Prado, the black sheep brother of Miami's power family, was already there when Dexter arrived. Oscar Prado was everything his successful brothers weren't. While Miguel climbed the ranks as an assistant district attorney and Ramon served as a respected sheriff, Oscar was a drug-addicted mess who owed money to dangerous people. He borrowed from Pharaoh and couldn't pay back, making him a liability in the dealer's eyes. When Dexter tracked Pharaoh to his hideout, he expected to find his target alone and vulnerable. Instead, he walked into a violent confrontation already in progress. Oscar was attacking Pharaoh with a bayonet, desperate and high, trying to settle his debt the only way he knew how, with violence. The timing couldn't have been worse. Dexter burst through the door just as Oscar had Pharaoh cornered, and his sudden appearance distracted Oscar for the crucial seconds Pharaoh needed. The drug dealer bolted, escaping through a back window, while Oscar was left holding a bloody weapon and staring at a stranger who just cost him his only chance at survival. What followed was pure chaos. Oscar, strung out and panicked, turned the bayonet towards Dexter. He had no idea who the stranger was or why he'd ruined everything, but he was beyond rational thinking. The drugs, the desperation, and the adrenaline had pushed him past the breaking point. Dexter found himself in a life or death struggle with a man he never researched, never confirmed as a killer, never intended to target. Oscar swung the bayonet wildly, and Dexter's training kicked in. Years of martial arts and carefully honed reflexes took over as he fought for his life. The struggle was brief but brutal. Dexter managed to gain control of the weapon, and what he would later claim was self-defense drove the bayonet deep into Oscar's chest. The blade pierced his heart, and Oscar's eyes went wide with shock and confusion. As life drained from his body, Oscar managed 3 words that would haunt Dexter for months. Who are you? It wasn't an accusation or a curse. It was a genuine question from a dying man who had no idea why his life was ending. Those 3 words hit Dexter like a physical blow. For the first time in his killing career, he was looking into the eyes of a victim who truly didn't deserve to die according to his code. Oscar was not a murderer who escaped justice. He was just an addict who made bad choices and ended up in the wrong place at the worst possible time. Dexter stood over the body, genuinely shaken. The man who killed dozens without feeling a flicker of emotion was suddenly asking himself the same question Oscar had asked. Who are you? Was he a righteous killer dispensing justice, or was he just another murderer who found a way to justify his actions? For a moment, the carefully constructed walls around Dexter's psyche cracked. He had always told himself he was different, better than the killers he hunted, but standing over Oscar's corpse where Pharaoh escaped and his mission failed, that distinction seemed meaningless. Let's be honest, Oscar Prado was attacking Dexter with a deadly weapon. Any reasonable person would call it self-defense. But here's the thing, Dexter had options that night. He could have tried to help Oscar, could have called for medical assistance, and could have shown mercy to a desperate addict. Instead, he made sure Oscar died, then convinced himself it was justified. That choice revealed everything about who Dexter really was beneath the code and the careful moral reasoning. When the push came to shove, he was a killer first and a philosopher second. Dexter kept insisting it was self-defense, but next time he wouldn't even have that excuse, and the fallout was far worse. Season 4 was supposed to be Dexter's perfect life. Married to Rita, playing suburban dad, balancing family with his dark passenger, but perfection made him sloppy, and when photographer Jonathan Pharaoh crossed his path, Dexter's assumptions would lead to his most devastating mistake yet. When model Estrella Carrazzo's severed arm was found inside an alligator, all roads led to Jonathan Pharaoh. This fashion photographer specialized in grotesque imagery that bordered on torture porn, women eating their own intestines, bruised faces presented as art, and violence disguised as creativity. His portfolio read like a serial killer's fantasy, making him the obvious suspect. Pharaoh had all the red flags Dexter looked for: a 2002 rape arrest in New York that mysteriously disappeared when the victim recanted, likely after being paid off, a history of roughing up his models for artistic contrast, and now a dead girl who had been brutally beaten in his studio before disappearing forever. Everything pointed to Pharaoh being another monster who slipped through the justice system's cracks, the kind of predator Harry's code was designed to eliminate. Dexter's investigation seemed to confirm every suspicion. Blood evidence in Pharaoh's studio proved Estrella had been beaten there. The photographer's casual admission that he roughed up models for his art showed a complete lack of remorse. When questioned by police, Pharaoh even had the audacity to hit on Deborah, telling her he could make her a star if she came to his studio. That comment sealed his fate. Nobody threatened Dexter's sister and lived to tell about it. Pharaoh's behavior during questioning was arrogant and dismissive. He treated the investigation like an inconvenience, showing no concern for a dead woman who worked for him. His attitude screamed guilt to everyone in the room, especially Dexter, who was already building the kill room in his mind. The Trinity Killer investigation was consuming Dexter's attention, but he couldn't let this obvious predator slip away while he chased Arthur Mitchell. Some kills couldn't wait, and Jonathan Pharaoh seemed like exactly the kind of monster who'd escalate if left unchecked. Dexter's first attempt to grab Pharaoh from a nightclub failed when Quinn showed up unexpectedly, but the second time, he got his man. Abducting Pharaoh from his home, Dexter transported him to the one place that seemed most appropriate: Pharaoh's own photography studio. The irony was perfect. The same place where Pharaoh had brutalized women for his twisted art would become the site of his execution. Dexter wrapped him in plastic, secured him to his own equipment, and prepared to deliver justice for Estrella Carrazzo. But something was wrong. Even faced with certain death, Pharaoh maintained his innocence with surprising conviction. "I never killed anyone," he insisted, explaining that he only beat his models to create artistic contrast between beauty and ugliness. His protests seemed genuine, but Dexter had made up his mind. Without hesitation, Dexter brought the cleaver down, severing Pharaoh's head in one clean stroke. The photographer's final moments were filled with confusion and terror, the look of a man who genuinely didn't understand while he was dying. The next morning brought devastating news. Angel Batista walked into the station with Timothy Brand, Pharaoh's assistant, in handcuffs. The evidence against Brand was overwhelming: security footage, DNA, and witness testimony. He was Estrella's real killer, and he had been hiding in plain sight while his boss took the blame. Dexter stood frozen as the truth crashed over him. For the first time in his killing career, he had murdered an innocent man. Not innocent in the sense of being a good person. Pharaoh was still a predator who abused women, don't get me wrong, but innocent of the specific crime that had earned him a death sentence. The realization was shattering. Dexter's entire identity was built on the premise that he only killed those who deserved it. He was supposed to be different from other murderers, guided by a moral code that prevented exactly this kind of mistake. But standing in the bullpen, watching Brand get processed for Estrella's murder, Dexter finally understood what he really was: just another killer who found a way to justify his actions. And he wasn't the only innocent man to die because of Dexter's arrogance. Subscribe if you're seeing the pattern and want more episodes that show how deep this rot really went. Pharaoh was a mistake that Dexter could barely process, but what he did next wasn't a mistake. It was rage. Pure human rage. Rita Morgan died because of Dexter's choices, and he knew it. The Trinity Killer had murdered his wife as final revenge, leaving Dexter alone with 3 children and grief so raw it threatened to destroy him. What happened in that remote bait shop revealed the monster beneath all his careful control. Season 5 opened with Dexter in complete emotional collapse. Rita's death had shattered his world, and he was fleeing Miami by sea, running from responsibilities he couldn't face. The man who controlled every aspect of his existence was drowning in emotions he didn't understand. Dexter had always believed he was incapable of genuine human emotion, but sitting in that blood-soaked bathroom, holding his infant son while Rita's body laid cooling, something fundamental broke inside of him. When his boat ran out of gas at a remote fueling station, Dexter encountered another customer having a bad day. Rankin was trying to get the bathroom key, growing frustrated when no staff appeared. He found the key himself and noticed Dexter watching him. "The hell you looking at?" Rankin snapped, embarrassed about taking the key without permission, and channeling that embarrassment into hostility. Dexter, still numb from Rita's death, was staring without really seeing. He wasn't planning anything, just existing in emotional shock. Following Rankin into the bathroom was instinctive, not predatory. Dexter was seeking human connection, any acknowledgement of his pain. In his broken state, he tried being vulnerable with a stranger. "My wife died this week," Dexter said. "It was my fault." It was the closest thing to a genuine confession he'd ever made. Rankin's response was devastating. "Well, I'm real sorry for your fucking loss, but your dead wife can suck my dick." This stranger had taken his most vulnerable moment and spat on Rita's memory. Dexter's reaction was instant and brutal. He grabbed a folding anchor and brought it down on Rankin's skull again and again, 10 times. Long after the man was dead, Dexter kept hitting, unleashing years of bottled emotion. Standing over Rankin's remains, Dexter experienced something new: genuine human rage followed by genuine remorse. For the first time, he killed purely from emotion, not compulsion or planning. Harry's ghost delivered the most damning assessment. "That's the first human thing you've done since Rita died." This murder was different, driven by grief and love rather than the dark passenger. The kill brought no satisfaction, no justice served, just a dead stranger, and the realization that Dexter could lose control completely when pushed past his limits. Rankin's death ended Dexter's illusion of being a controlled, methodical killer. It proved that underneath his rituals and justification was just another violent man who'd kill anyone when angry enough. This breakdown would define the rest of the series. From here, Dexter's kills became increasingly impulsive and emotionally driven. His code revealed itself as elaborate self-deception. Rankin was a horrible man, but that isn't a capital offense. What makes this kill significant is it's honestly that Dexter wasn't hiding behind noble justification. He was just a broken man who snapped. It was the most human thing he's ever done, and the most revealing. That rage was ugly, but the most dangerous thing to Dexter was still someone with a badge and a working brain. Stan Litty was a sleazy ex-cop with a vendetta, but he was also the most competent investigator to ever target Dexter Morgan. His mistake was getting too close to the truth and refusing to back down when things got dangerous. Quinn suspected Dexter's involvement in Rita's death because the murder didn't fit Trinity's pattern. Desperate for answers, but constrained by department politics, he hired Stan Litty, a disgraced narcotics detective detective who had been fired for corruption but still had investigative skills. Litty saw this as his chance for redemption, proving that a respected forensic analyst was actually a serial killer would restore his reputation and get him back on the force. He threw himself into the investigation with the obsessive dedication of a man with nothing left to lose. Litty's surveillance was extensive and professional. He photographed Dexter and Logan disposing of plastic wrap bundles from Dexter's boat, captured video of them practicing kill techniques, and documented suspicious late-night activities that no innocent person would be doing. When Quinn tried to call off the investigation, partly because of his growing relationship with Deborah, Litty refused. He invested too much time and uncovered too much evidence to quit now. The corrupt cop had stumbled onto the biggest case of his career, and he wasn't walking away. Litty even illegally entered Miami Metro to steal surveillance equipment under Quinn's name, showing how far he'd go to build his case. Litty's final gambit was capturing Dexter in his surveillance van. He tased him unconscious and was demanding a full confession on video, believing this would give him the evidence needed to destroy Dexter completely. But Litty made a fatal error. He underestimated who he was dealing with. When Dexter broke free and kicked him in the face, sending him flying towards the front of the van, Litty tried to stab him with a knife. It was a desperate move by a cornered man who knew his life was in danger. Dexter, with years of martial arts training and killing experience, easily overpowered the aging ex-cop. In what technically qualified as self-defense, he stabbed Litty in the chest, ending both the investigation and the investigator. Quinn arrived at the marina to find Litty's van locked and apparently empty. A drop of Litty's blood fell on Quinn's shoe, unnoticed evidence that would make him a prime suspect in his hired investigator's death. Dexter had already destroyed Litty's surveillance footage and equipment, erasing months of evidence that could have exposed him. Later, he would tamper with blood evidence to clear Quinn, protecting the boyfriend of his sister while covering up his own crime. Litty's body was discovered, but his murder remained unsolved. The corrupt cop who had gotten closest to exposing the Bay Harbor butcher became just another statistic. Litty's death proved that even professional investigators couldn't safely pursue Dexter. Despite his corruption, Litty had been genuinely trying to solve crimes and expose what he believed was a dangerous killer loose in Miami. Stan Litty was absolutely corrupt, and his methods were in fact illegal, but he was also right about everything. Dexter was a serial killer. He was dangerous, and he needed to be stopped. Litty's only mistake was thinking that he could take down a predator without becoming prey himself. The irony is that Litty died doing what cops are supposed to do, investigating criminals and seeking justice. His corruption didn't negate the fact that he was trying to stop a monster. Even after Litty, Dexter didn't stop. He just took the paranoia with him, straight into Nebraska. Norm seemed like a helpful small-town guy when he fixed Dexter's flat tire and pointed him towards the Mitchell house. But greed and paranoia turned the Shady Lane motel owner into an extortionist, and Dexter's response revealed just how far he'd fallen from Harry's code. Dexter had traveled to Nebraska to investigate Jonah Mitchell and the remaining Trinity killer victims. The remote location and family tragedy investigation had him on edge, dealing with ghosts both literal and metaphorical, as hallucination Brian urged him towards darker impulses. Norm ran a rundown motel and supplemented his income by growing marijuana in the surrounding cornfields. He was paranoid about law enforcement, but still helpful to paying customers, at least until he discovered something that made him see dollar signs. When Norm spotted Dexter's forensic kit in his car trunk, his helpful demeanor vanished. The expensive knives, professional tools, and Dexter's soft hands convinced him he was dealing with a federal agent, DEA, ATF, or FBI. For a small-time pot grower, that meant potential disaster. But instead of running, Norm saw an opportunity. He stole Dexter's entire kill kit, including the knives that were essential to his ritual, and decided to turn the situation into profit. $10,000 for the return of the tools, a fortune for a failing motel owner. Norm's logic was simple. If this guy was really a Fed, he'd pay anything to get his equipment back. If he wasn't, what could one soft-handed city boy do about it? The confrontation took place in Norm's storage shed, surrounded by marijuana plants and glass jars full of his illegal harvest. Norm laid out his terms, $10,000 or the knives disappear forever. When Dexter mockingly agreed but demanded the tools first, Norm realized he was being played. Pulling out what he believed was a loaded gun, Norm threatened Dexter's life. "Either you give me the money or you're a dead man," he declared, thinking he held all the cards. But Dexter knew something Norm didn't. The gun wasn't loaded. He already checked it after taking it from a convenience store clerk earlier. Instead of backing down or negotiating, Dexter grabbed a nearby pitchfork and drove it straight into Norm's stomach. As Norm died, impaled on farming equipment, Hallucination Brian delivered brutal honesty about Dexter's true nature. He didn't kill because victims deserved it. He killed because he enjoyed watching life leave their eyes, regardless of guilt or innocence. Unable to dispose of the body in his usual ocean dumping ground, Dexter improvised. He threw Norm's corpse into a grain silo, watching it disappear under tons of corn. "Hope you took a souvenir," Brian remarked, highlighting how this kill lacked even the ritualistic elements that supposedly distinguished Dexter's murders. The casual disposal matched the casual killing. No ceremony, no blood slide, no sense of justice served. Just a dead extortionist buried in grain like any other piece piece of farm waste. The next death was about guilt, and this time, Dexter wasn't the only one carrying it. Andrew Briggs was supposed to be just another mark for private investigator Deborah Morgan. Instead, he became her self-destructive escape from the guilt of murdering LaGuerta, and ultimately another casualty of Dexter's toxic presence in everyone's life. Season 8 opened with Deborah in complete freefall. Killing LaGuerta had shattered her moral compass, and she quit the police force to work as a private investigator. Her assignment was simple: pose as a junkie, get close to armed robber Andrew Briggs, and gather evidence for his arrest. But Deborah wasn't acting anymore. The drugs were real, the self-destruction was real, and her relationship with Briggs became genuine. She was using him as an escape from recent events that made her a killer and the life she lost because of Dexter's secrets. Briggs represented everything that Deborah thought she deserved: a criminal relationship with a damaged man, punishment for her sins disguised as romance. When Dexter learned that hitman El Sapo was coming to kill both Briggs and Deborah over some drug deal gone wrong, he panicked. His sister was in danger because of choices she made while spiraling from guilt he caused. Racing to their seedy motel, Dexter arrived to find chaos already brewing. El Sapo was there to settle scores. Deborah was high and vulnerable, and Briggs was trying to protect the woman he genuinely cared about despite barely knowing her real identity. The situation was a powder keg of cross motives: a hitman seeking revenge, a guilt-ridden ex-cop drowning in drugs, her serial killer brother trying to save her, and a small-time criminal caught in the middle. The hotel room confrontation erupted into violence, with multiple people fighting for their lives. El Sapo had come to kill, Briggs was defending himself and Deborah, and Dexter was trying to extract his sister from the chaos she created. In the struggle, Briggs grabbed a knife, probably planning to defend himself against the hitmen who come to murder him. But Dexter was faster, more experienced, and had years of killing reflexes that kicked in during life or death situations. The blade that was meant for El Sapo ended up in Briggs' chest instead. Dexter had killed Deborah's boyfriend while trying to save her, adding another body to the collateral damage of his existence. Briggs died confused and betrayed, stabbed by the brother of a woman he tried to protect. His last moments were spent looking at Deborah, probably wondering why her family had brought death to his door. Dexter begged Deborah to leave with him, to abandon this self-destructive spiral and return to some version of their old life. But she refused, choosing to stay with Briggs' corpse rather than follow the brother who caused all her pain. When El Sapo tried to finish his original mission, Deborah killed him herself, another murder to add to her growing body count. Dexter ended up cleaning up both crime scenes, covering for a sister who hated him while disposing of evidence of his own unnecessary killing. The rift between them deepened with every lie, every cover-up, every death that followed in Dexter's wake. Whenever love got involved, the code simply meant nothing, because what he did next couldn't have been about justice. It was personal. Clint McKay was everything wrong with toxic masculinity wrapped up in one alcoholic package: a con man, compulsive gambler, and child abuser who traumatized his daughter for years before abandoning her. When he returned demanding money, Dexter decided some fathers don't deserve to live. Hannah had shared the horrific details of her childhood with Dexter, how Clint threw her into a pond at the age of 6 to teach her how to swim, then watched her nearly drown without helping, how he disappeared for months, leaving her with an equally damaged mother, how his cruelty had shaped her into someone who solved problems with poison. Clint was the reason she ran away at 15 with a serial killer, the source of her trust issues and violent tendencies. Dexter saw him as the root cause of Hannah's damage, making him a legitimate target in his mind. Clint's return was all about money. He showed up at Hannah's greenhouse demanding $20,000, convinced his successful daughter owed him for the sacrifice of raising her. When Hannah refused, his true nature emerged. In a drunken rage, Clint destroyed her greenhouse, the one place where Hannah found peace growing beautiful things. He smashed plants, overturned tables, and demolished months of careful work while screaming about ungrateful children and family obligations. Watching Hannah's pain triggers something protective in Dexter. This was about eliminating someone who hurt the woman he loved. Dexter's approach was calculated and personal. He lured Clint into his boat under false pretenses, then gave him the full ritual treatment: plastic wrap, kill table, the complete ceremony usually reserved for confirmed murderers. When Clint realized what was happening, he called Dexter the devil, perhaps the most accurate character assessment anyone has ever made. Dexter's response was chilling in his honesty: "I think that's just me." The confession revealed everything. Dexter wasn't a righteous avenger or a tortured vigilante. He was exactly what Clint called him: a devil who found ways to justify his nature through elaborate moral codes and careful victim selection. The knife went into Clint's chest with the same precision Dexter used on serial killers, but this time there was no pretense of justice, just a man eliminating an obstacle to his happiness. As he dumped Clint's weighted body into the ocean, Dexter delivered a final insult: "Sink or swim, daddy." Dexter was literally giving Clint the same choice he'd given his 6-year-old daughter. The mockery revealed how personal this kill had been. Clint's death marked Dexter's complete abandonment of his supposed principles. For the first time, he'd given someone the full ritual treatment, while knowing they weren't a murderer. The plastic, the table, the ceremony, all of it had been perverted to serve his personal desires, rather than than any concept of justice. This kill established the template for future violations. When family or loved ones were threatened, Harry's code meant nothing. Dexter would kill anyone who hurt people he cared about, using the full weight of his murderous skills against targets who didn't deserve death. The ritualistic nature made it worse than his other code violations. Oscar Prado had been an accident, Rankin a moment of rage, and Norm a convenience kill, but Clint received the full treatment, as if being a bad father was equivalent to being a serial killer. Dexter was rewriting the rules, one kill at a time. Comment down below, which of these victims do you think proved that he was never in control? Next, Dexter pulls out all the stop by killing someone better than him in every way. Sergeant Logan was everything Dexter pretended to be: a protector, a mentor, a genuinely good man who made his community safer. His murder represented the final proof that Dexter Morgan had become the very monster he spent decades hunting. Logan embodied small-town law enforcement at its best. He coached wrestling, mentored troubled kids, and treated everyone with respect regardless of their background. When Jim Lindsay arrived in Iron Lake, Logan welcomed him as a neighbor and friend, never suspecting he was harboring America's most prolific serial killer. The relationship between Logan and Harrison had been particularly meaningful. Logan served as a father figure to a boy whose real father was a killer, offering guidance and stability that Dexter never could. He represented the normal life Harrison craved but could never have. When Angela Bishop arrested Dexter on suspicion of being the Bay Harbor Butcher, Logan struggled to reconcile the accusations with the man he knew. Jim Lindsay had been a quiet, helpful member of their community, nothing like the monster from Miami Metro's files. Even while holding Dexter in custody, Logan treated him with kindness. He brought food, made conversation, and seemed genuinely concerned about his friend's well-being. Logan represented the best of humanity, someone who could show compassion even to those accused of terrible crimes. His decency made what came next even that more horrific. Dexter's escape plan was simple, but required Logan's cooperation. Luring the sergeant close to his cell, Dexter grabbed him and slammed his head repeatedly against the bars. The attack was sudden, vicious, and completely unprovoked. When Logan briefly seemed willing to give up his keys to avoid further violence, Dexter had his chance for mercy. But when Logan reached for his gun, doing exactly what any police officer would do when attacked by a dangerous suspect, Dexter snapped his neck with cold efficiency. The kill was purely practical. Logan wasn't a threat to innocent people, wasn't a murderer who'd escaped justice, wasn't anything except an obstacle between Dexter and freedom. For the first time in his killing career, Dexter murdered someone purely for convenience, without even the pretense of moral justification. Dexter showed no remorse for killing a genuinely good man. He was focused entirely on escape, treating Logan's corpse as nothing more than an inconvenience to step over on his way to freedom. When Harrison discovered Logan's body and confronted his father, Dexter's justification was pathetic. He was gonna shoot me, as if a police officer drawing his weapon on an escaping suspect was somehow unreasonable or unexpected. The excuse revealed everything about who Dexter had become. The man who once claimed to only kill those who deserved it was now murdering innocent people and blaming them for their own deaths. Logan's death was the final straw for Harrison. Watching his father justify the murder of a man who had been nothing but kind to both of them, Harrison finally understood what Dexter really was. Not a vigilante seeking justice, but a predator who killed anyone standing in his way. The murder led directly to Dexter's death. Harrison's decision to shoot his father stemmed from the realization that Logan's murder proved Dexter was irredeemable. The good man's death had finally exposed the monster completely. Logan's murder also proved that all of Dexter's supposed growth, all of his attempts at redemption, all his years of trying to be better had been meaningless. When survival was at stake, he reverted to pure predator instinct. Sergeant Logan was the most innocent victim on this entire list. He'd done nothing except be kind to a man who turned out to be a killer. His murder was the ultimate proof that Dexter's code had always been a lie. Elaborate self-justification for a man who simply enjoyed killing. Logan died for doing his job and treating people with basic human decency. His death revealed Dexter as exactly what he'd always been, a cold-blooded killer who found sophisticated ways to justify his nature. For a man who swore only to kill the guilty, Dexter Morgan left behind a trail of bodies that told a different story. Every unjustified kill exposed the truth. The code didn't make Dexter good, it just made him feel better about being a monster. Next up, I'm going to be breaking down the biggest plot twist in Dexter.